Welcome to this DVW Analytics webinar around the Snowflake Connector for SAP. My name's Ian James. I'm going to show you a few slides, some details around the connectors. So the DVW Analytics Snowflake Connector for SAP. Basically, it does exactly what it says on the tin. It connects SAP data directly to your Snowflake instance. As a company, DVW Analytics have been working with connectors to various analytics platforms for 6-7 years now, with huge success. And as you can see on the slide here, we have well over 300 companies, organizations globally using our connectors, some smaller names, but many bigger names, some of the biggest names, biggest companies around the globe using our connectors, and they're obviously they're, as you can see, across many verticals, but the one thing they have in common is they all run SAP, and they have a need to get their SAP data from within SAP, which, as you may not know, is a challenge. And we have connectors that allow this to be done easily in a straightforward manner, both from the IT side, but also, and more importantly, from the business side. And hopefully I can show you how that can be done in both those instances. So when we say SAP, what we mean is pretty much anything with SAP on the label. Certainly, if you look in the top corner of this slide, and by the way, this slide is just a partial list of the supported systems that we can connect into. But if you look at the top left, you can see the standard sort of ERP systems. So from the older SAP R3 systems through to ECC and S for HANA. And equally on the BW side, from older through to the newer BW on HANA, BW4 HANA type solutions. We can certainly connect to those, and indeed to any of the business suite solutions such as CRM, SRM, etc., and the industry solutions also. So if you have an industry solution running, then that's good as well. In fact, we can connect pretty much to any ABAP-based system. So if it's in the ABAP stack, there is no issue whatsoever connecting to those systems. As well as that side, however, we can connect into the newer, if you like, cloud solutions for SAP. So things like C4C or SAP Marketing Cloud. Also in the HR space, obviously the acquisition, success factors, it's possible to connect into data there. And finally, top right, into the planning solutions or forecasting solutions such as BPC, business planning consolidation, and the more up-to-date, if you like, integrated business planning also. So all of those vast array of SAP systems, but this is a partial list. If you don't see your system, particular SAP system on this list, then please let us know, and we can confirm that either by asking Darren a question or contacting us at our website, which is actually dvwanalytics.com. Okay. So we have a large breadth of possibilities in terms of how we connect into SAP, but we also have a depth of data connectivity, i.e. in the way that we connect to those solutions, and the way you want to connect to your data can obviously depend on your use case. If we start on the left-hand side here, you can see that in terms of different types of connectivity, probably the primary that we see for a Snowflake solution is to hit the SAP tables. So this is the most granular level within SAP. It's worth saying at this point that we actually technically don't hit the tables as such. We never actually, as a paradigm, connect directly into the SAP database. So if there are SAP bods out there, don't worry, we always go via the application layer. And this has two benefits. One is that when we connect into the SAP application layer, you need to have an SAP user for that system. So you need credentials to log on to that system, just as you would, say, via the SAP GUI. That means that obviously the application server will check that you're a bona fide user, but also will apply your authorizations. So that gives obviously a restriction and a good, well-governed set of restricted data that a user can have access to. The second bonus is that the SAP Basis team, your SAP Basis team, will have put in what are called safety belts. And these safety belts stop you doing any harm to the SAP system, basically. They don't allow you to extract too much data in one chunk. They don't allow you to tie up processes for too long. They'll politely ask you to stop you actually, and move you on your way. Doesn't mean you can't extract large amounts of data with our extractors. It just means that we can't hurt the SAP system. We can't do any damage to the SAP system. So that aside, okay, back to the depth and the possibilities of how we can connect. So we've said we can connect to SAP tables. What's also a nice solution in terms of a business user is that we can also connect to data via T-codes. So a T-code, a transaction code, is just a report or a program that's run usually within the SAP GUI. I'll show you an example of this later if you're not familiar with SAP. But the business users, for the business users, this will be their primary source of data from within SAP. Typically, they might extract that to an Excel file and then play around with it. Obviously, if we can extract that data for them, or they can extract it into Snowflake, you can then combine that data, you can publish it, etc., etc. And I don't need to tell you all about Snowflake and the power there. So T-codes, also the SAP spool. It's related because if you run a report or T-code in the background, then it will create a spool, which is effectively the old print job. Okay, so it will sit on this spool, this print queue, and we can connect to it and extract it from there. In the cloud space, OData is king, so we can connect via OData to the cloud solutions. Also, in a more technical sense, we can connect to BAPIs or function modules that have been RFC enabled. This is a very useful way to connect to the data and a well-governed way, well known by it in SAP circles, of course. If you need delta loads, then it's possible to leverage the ODP connectivity, so the SAP ODP solution. And then in the BW space, we have all manner of possibilities. So we can connect to queries, to views, even to info providers, so the cubes or the multi-providers, all the way down to info objects even. So that would be the master data effectively, and also hierarchies. And then if your systems are running on HANA, we can connect to any HANA view, so calculation views, etc., etc. Okay, now the idea is that what we do is we build our connectivity, our connections, if you like, on the DVW Analytics SCS platform. It's an integration platform, therefore we talk to the SAP system, we establish a connection. In that configuration, we say which data we want to bring from SAP, and then we can push that data into Snowflake. And as you'll see, using our server version, we can even schedule that push to Snowflake. All to come, I'll show you that as we go through the demos. Okay, so I think I've covered most of these points, but let's just pick up a few of them. The solution can run either on desktop, obviously for a business, and a business user, should I say. So I'll show you that. But also we have a server version. Either way, it's really easy to install. With the server version, and in fact with the desktop to a degree, you can have process scheduling, so you can schedule your pushes into Snowflake. The extraction, certainly at a table level, has been proved on test beds to be 90% faster than the SAP standard extractor. So if you are looking to pull large amounts of data into Snowflake from, I don't know, the bigger SAP tables like BKPF, BSEG, the finance tables, etc., then you can do that without breaking those safety belts. We can break those calls up. I'll show you that later. But we can pull that data across very efficiently, 90% faster than you can with the standard SAP extractor. In terms of the other pieces here, I've mentioned that we can respect the user's authorizations and those safety belts. That's really important and will be for your SAP basis team. And there's no staging of the data here. So it's a straight pull through and push on the fly. Okay, we're not staging it at any point and doing anything with it. We're just pulling the data through and facilitating that push into Snowflake. So just a little more technical detail. We've said already that our SAP sources are either contacted via RFC or OData if they're cloud solutions. The platform sits, as we said, desktop or maybe server, and runs basically on Python and a Python script. You'll see how that's generated, how easy it is to manipulate and use those. And the communication is HTTPS, so all very secure, end-to-end, encrypted data transfer all the way into Snowflake. So let's look at the first scenario then. That's the one where I'm a business user. I need some data from SAP. I'd like to get into Snowflake. I want to combine it, I don't know, with other data sets I've got, or create maybe a dashboard or something. But I've got a need to pull that data into Snowflake. So on the left-hand side, we have our SAP system or systems. I'm going to show you a demo in a minute from ECC, but as we said, it could be multiple different systems. There's an RFC call that's made by a configuration within the desktop console, and that configuration, when it's run, uses Python scripting to push that data across into Snowflake. So enough talk, let's see this in action. I'm actually going to start in SAP because I'm aware that some of you may come from the Snowflake side and maybe haven't even seen SAP before. So for those that have seen SAP, bear with me, I won't be too long. But for those that haven't, this is SAP. Okay, so here's my ECC system. This is the SAP GUI. And a business user might look to get their data in this way. They log on using their username and password, which brings them into the SAP system. And then they get the choice of running a report, a transaction code, as it's known, a T code. I'm going to run this one here. As you can see, it's general ledger. So if I double click, it runs the report and I get a parameter screen where I can enter which GL accounts, which accounts I'm looking for, which company codes, maybe some dates, even the layout I can enter here. So I can manually enter those in there. However, there's also the possibility of using something called a variant. Now, variant is a pre-saved set of parameters, as you'll see. So here are, as you can see, lots in our test system, our demo system. I'm going to use this one here. And when I click on that, it brings through some parameters already saved for me on the SAP side. So I've got a range of GLs, a company code, some dates, and I'm going to use the sort of standard layout. And now all I do is run this transaction, this report, and it will go look at the SAP data and bring back a report here. Now, in GUI terms, this is nicely presented. It is what it is. For downstream analytics, maybe not so good. As you can see, we have a table of data in here. Okay, in fact, several tables. We have one table for each combination of GL account and company code. It would be nice if that data was within the table for analytics, but we'll talk about that in a minute. We've also got obviously totals, and then this repeats again and again and again, as you can see as I scroll down the screen. If I can go a little bit quicker. There we go. Okay, so we get a whole bunch of data in our T code. Now, what can the user do? Well, at this point, what the user generally does is extract this data into Excel, okay, which uses more processing time on the SAP side, by the way. They will then wrangle that data within Excel. Obviously, you can imagine it can be a bit of a struggle to parse this data correctly and get it to look so we can actually extract the line items here and get some meaningful data to use downstream in their analytics. It takes time, it takes resource in SAP. It's a bit of hard work. So let's see how much easier it is using our console and pushing that data into Snowflake. So this is our console. You can see I've already created some configurations, some connections here to some SAP tables, to BW query, to T codes. I'm going to start, as I said, from a business user's point of view. So I'm going to run this T code, but I'm going to run it actually in the console. So I'm going to create a configuration. Here we are. So the configuration screen, here it is. We have the choice of the tools that I mentioned. So BW reads, tables, spool, you can see success factors, C4C, etc., etc. Okay, all the various tools. I'm going to stick with T code, as I mentioned. And I've also then got a list of SAP systems that I can connect to. And there's a whole range in here. Obviously, I've got thousands because of my many demo systems, but you get a flavor, BW CRM, for the type of different systems that we can connect to. Okay, I'm going to stay with ECC. And you can see that my username and password has been retained. Obviously, it's encrypted within my desktop here. I can ping that system now just to check all is good. It is, thank goodness. The curse of the demo hasn't struck yet. So we can see that we've got good connectivity back into that ECC system. My credentials are bona fide, and I can move on. So I'm going to give my connection a name. I'm going to call it FBL3N. Let's call it test. Oops, I can't spell. Test 001. Okay, I'll save it there, but it will autosave, as you can see. And then I can go across the tabs here. So next is to set up my parameters. I need to tell the system, the connection, which report or transaction code I want to connect to. As we saw, it's FBL3N, which is the report you've just seen on SAP. And I'm going to search now. So that's now talking back to my SAP system and checking that that T code exists. It does, and it's got this program connected to it, this report connected to it. So when I select that, it's now going to go off and effectively run that report. And you can see immediately it's brought back for me all those variants that I saw within SAP. So these are from within SAP. So I'm going to choose the one I used before, this ACS GL range, okay? I could, of course, if I wanted, let me just sort this. I could, of course, enter a company code or GL, even a layout manually if I wished. Okay, so I can configure manually, but for speed's sake, it's easier to use a variant. So I'm going to run this T code with this variant now. I can do that in a data preview and say, look, show me a raw preview of what that might look like. Now, hopefully this is not a surprise because we've just seen it within the SAP GUI. It's exactly the same, maybe not quite so colorful, but you'll see why we've chosen gray here for good reasons, okay? But you can see, here's our combination of GL and company code, a little mini table, and some sums, okay, some totals. And that's repeated again and again as we saw before. It's exactly what we've just seen in the GUI. So what can we do? We can tidy this up a great deal. Okay, there's good functionality in here. You can see, for instance, that this is a header row. If I right click on here and say add header row, and then just raw preview again, then you can see it's color coding that header row there. In fact, it's not just color coding it here, it's color coding it anywhere it sees that pattern. So each of those little mini tables is being color coded. We can also put header values, so this GL and company code, into the table. So if I right click, I can pass a header field, and you see it's starting to take my configuration and hold it up the top, pass another header field. And also I can ignore rows. You can see those in gray, the blanks and the dashes have been ignored already, they're in gray, but these totals really for analytics aren't useful at this stage. We can consolidate later. So let's right click here and ignore rows like this. Now you can see in the configuration, not every program is perfect. In fact, many are not. What it's seeing is that it's seen a pipe at the start here for this, but it's going to ignore, therefore, anywhere where it sees a pipe, and we don't want it to ignore the data rows. So what we can say is, look, actually, there's an asterisk here. In the fourth character, there's an asterisk. So I can just manually change this. Okay, so I can say where there's an asterisk in the fourth character, now I want you to ignore it. Now if I say rail preview again, it's going to color code all this for me. And it's starting to look good, okay? Anything in gray is going to be ignored. So the totals have gone, as you can see correctly. White is our data, green are the headers, and the blue are the rows that we want to be created as a column. So these are the values that we want to be created as a column in the data sets. And it's done this for every little mini table that it finds. You can see everywhere where that format is found, it repeats that. What's great also within the screen here is that I can confirm that layout and see what the data will look like. Now you can see it's much more usable. Okay, so it's stripped out all those extras, and we can see that we've got GL and company code in a column. The other columns have been parsed nicely for us. All the extras have gone. We can even at this stage say, look, okay, this column has nothing in it. I can see that. I know it's useless. So I'm going to go across and go into my fields tab. Here are my fields now. That ST column, let's change that. Let's get rid of it. Okay, so I can say, I don't want this column. I can even, if it's miscalculated the length, for whatever reason that can happen, we can change it. We can change the field type. I'm going to leave those for now, but that's a possibility. And we say, okay, apply that. And now when we go back to data preview, you can see the ST column has gone. This is going to be our output. We get a feel for what's being passed on. So all this will be done when this configuration, this connection is run from within the console, and then we'll push it off into Snowflake. Let's save that configuration then. That's good, and we'll go back into our console, and we can see here is our configuration ready to be used. Now the next thing we need to do, you may recall I mentioned that this system runs on Python, so we need a Python script to be able to run this configuration, pull the data and push it and control the push into Snowflake. So what we do, don't worry, you don't have to be an expert in Python scripting. What we do is we click on the scripts tab and we can say, look, here's our configuration. What I want you to do is to create a Snowflake script for me. And here is the script created ready for you. Okay, this is maintainable. And in fact, I noticed this morning that there's a piece of my configuration has gone missing. I'm using a beta. Foolishly, I upgraded, but no problem. I can just put that back in. So you can see it's good proof that you can maintain these. So there you go. So I've updated that. I can maintain if I do have some Python what's in here. Alternatively, all I need to do is save this. Okay, and when we see in file management here, you can see now if I just switch on my Python scripts as well, that we have a config script and a Snowflake Python script. So if we go into the script now, what's even better, we can run it. But before we go anywhere, we need to make sure we've got a landing strip within Snowflake to place this data. Let's just whiz across to Snowflake. You can see here is my table that I've created before. It corresponds in its columns to the columns of the output that we've just created. Okay, so obviously I created this earlier just for expediency's sake. So we can see this is where we're going to land our data. Nothing in there now. But if we switch back now to the console, we can say, hey, run this data into Python for me. Okay, and you can see it starts to run the session. It's found 368 records, and if we just scroll down, that should be all done and ready to go. If we come back into Snowflake, then all we need to do is to refresh that view, and there are 368 records ready to use. And exactly what we'd see in the console. Okay, so if we just preview that data, there they are, exactly the same company code GL, and all the data we were looking for. Okay, so you can imagine there that a business user could have ad hoc queries, could be using and pulling data that they need from T codes, but also from tables, from Spool, from other SAP areas, bringing that data into Snowflake and using the power of Snowflake to combine and wrangle that data and provide the necessary insights that are needed. So that's scenario one. That's from within, if you like, on the desktop, from within the business community. Okay, so that's a business scenario, ad hoc reporting. I won't get that in your head. However, where we see this being used quite a lot, and is really a game changer, is when it comes to more formal integrations, if you like, with SAP. Because if we use Server, as you can see on the screen now, we can use the desktop console to create our connections, just as we've just done. So we can build them there. We can test them, of course, into Snowflake, check that the data is landing as expected, so the flow is working. But as you'll see in a second, we can publish that connection up into the Server console. And within the Server console, we can then schedule those calls, maybe nightly, maybe hourly, it doesn't matter, okay, to pull data across from SAP, BW, HANA, ECC, pull the data across automatically and push the data into Snowflake. So updating Snowflake where it can be managed and then obviously consumed downstream. Okay, let's show you an example of that then. We'll go back into our console. And this time, let's create a new connection. We're going to this time connect to a table, just for the sake of change. We're going to connect to something simple like the MARA table. That's the material master table. Okay. Again, I'm going to save that and then start to parameterize. This screen looks slightly different, obviously, because we're connecting to a table rather than a T code, but the principle is just the same. We can search for our table, okay? So this is making a call back into our ECC system, anything with MARA, either in the technical name or in the description, as you can see here. But this is the table I'm looking for. I say okay. And that again, will go back to SAP and we'll pull the metadata for that table into the console. So if I open these up, whoops, you can see all the fields or the columns within that table. So these are all the columns within that table within SAP. And what the user then does is select which columns they're interested in for the output. We don't have to have all of it. What's also nice is we don't have to have all the data. So we can, if we like, filter on absolutely any field we like. And I'm going to add a blank filter, and that'll take me to the filters and variables tab. And if I right click on here, even better, we can search within SAP for values that are available. So if we can pick one of these, okay, and we can filter on one. We have the usual operators, less than, greater than, etc., even in list. And this is an important one actually, because if we select a few of these and then we use our split functionality, this is how we can break up the calls when we pull the data from the table. So this chunks up the calls because it will make a single call for each of these separate material types, for instance. Therefore, what that does is it obviously breaks it down, it makes it more efficient, but it also keeps those smaller chunks below the safety belts. So we're not doing any damage to the SAP system. We're not bumping up against that limit. We're just pulling the data in nice bite-sized chunks. I'm not going to do this in this case because I know this is a relatively small case in that there are only, I think, 19,000 rows on this table. Really, when you get up above 1 million lines that you start to think about breaking up into chunks like this. The process is so efficient that it's really not necessary until then. So let me cancel this, and I'm actually going to delete out this filter. You've seen that now, but I'm going to pull all the data. Now, as before, we've got a data preview here. So we can see exactly what we expect downstream in Snowflake. There's our 3 fields that we selected. You can see the values that are coming across. And if we're happy, then we can say, look, don't give me the first 200 records, give me all of them. Obviously, you want to do some testing before you do that, but let's have all of them now. Let's save that. And now we can close this configuration and we can look in here, and there's our Mara configuration. Again, we're going to create a script. So we come in, select Mara. It's going to be a Snowflake script, and save that. Now I could run this. Now if I was testing, of course, I would run it from my desktop as a developer, check that everything was running correctly, looked okay, all was fine. But I'm going to assume that that's all okay. And what we're going to do now is move all of this configuration up into the server level. So we're at desktop level at the moment. We can move to server, and all we need to do is simply select the files that we're interested in. So I need the configuration and the Python script, right click and push those files across to the remote server. Okay, so that's pushed it over. Now from within the same console, we're now able to switch to the remote, to the server, and you can see they've landed. Here are my two files. Okay, first thing to do is make sure we've got a landing spot. So as you can see, let's just jump across my Snowflake here. Here's Mara. Here are my fields configured the same way. Now the final step is simple. All we're going to do is we're going to right click and we're going to schedule this workflow. Okay. Say okay, and you can see that that is now scheduled and ready to work in there. I've got a couple running already. We'll talk about those in a second, but shortly that will automatically push the data into Snowflake. Now the data hopefully should land here. Cross your fingers for me. So what's happening there, let's just refresh our minds, is we've created our connection to the Mara table from within the console. We've built that to connect into ECC to pull the specific data we want. You saw you can be very specific about which data you bring, filter on any of the columns, and indeed you can make chunks, those splits, in order to break down those calls. You can test all of that manually, if you like, within the console, pushing it to your Snowflake instance. Once you're happy, then you publish that connectivity into the server together with its Python script, and you schedule that script to run on the schedule you're interested in. That then will automate that call. It will pull across the data into Snowflake, refreshing it every day, every hour, whatever is necessary. So automatically you're pulling data and servicing Snowflake with SAP data ready for downstream consumption. So let's jump back into Snowflake and see how our load is done. If we refresh, then hopefully we see it, and there it is, the 19,000 rows safely landed in Snowflake. Now let's look at one I did earlier. You can see here, for instance, this is actually the BSEG table. You may have seen the configuration before, and also the BKPF table. These are the header and line item tables, the major header and line item tables from within SAP Finance. If we look at those, you can see those have come across, and of course we can see the data in there. Now the key here is that these are relational tables. So what's nice is that we can make that join back, of course, in Snowflake. So we can pull the data we want over in Snowflake and join it. Alternatively, we do have a tool that will do that join in certain circumstances on the SAP side and pull the data across as one. Either way, what we get then is the ability to see that data within. Let's just go to here. So if we make a join then between our BKPF table and our BSEG table, simple join on the keys of both those tables, then when we run this, you'll see that we have the full view of the financial posting, its header value, and its line item data connected to it. And obviously then you can use that downstream in dashboards, publish it, make it available to whoever is relevant within Snowflake. Okay, so that's all that I'm going to show you today. Thank you for your attention. If you are interested, then please get in contact. Visit us at our website, which is, as you can see at the bottom here, dvwanalytics.com. My name's Ian James, and you can connect to me from the website there. Thank you very much for your attention, and have a good rest of your day. Thank you. Bye-bye.